Hi there. Today we're going to talk about Move 2 in the results section, which is called Occupying the Niche. Last time we talked about Move 1, Approaching the Niche, and we also discussed the overview of the results section. So today let's look at Move 2. Move 2 is, as I said, Occupying the Niche, and we're going to call it Move 2, and of course you know that these 4 moves can appear in different orders in different research result sections of different sorts of papers. This move is probably the most important move in your results section because it's used to report the actual findings of your study. Authors use Move 2 to present the results in explicit informational manner. So with an immense amount of detail and with supporting evidence that's relevant to those results, but without commenting on those results. So this is an important distinction to be able to have here in this move. So you discuss or you explain those results, you say what they are, but you don't comment or discuss or interpret those results further. So the presentation of the results in this move is often accompanied by what we call metatextual pointers. That means things like tables, graphs, charts, things that help visually orient and display the information that you're about to discuss. So let's discuss the moves the steps within this move. There are only 2 steps within Move 2. And they are reporting specific results and indicating alternative presentation of those results. So we're going to discuss these steps in the order they've listed here, but they can occur in different orders depending on your field and also the specific needs of the results section in your particular paper. So here we are. We're going to discuss each step separately. We're going to discuss its purpose and also look at examples of that step. Here's the first step we're going to talk about today. It's called reporting specific results. And the function of this step is to introduce specific quantitative or qualitative results of your study. The exact type of results is not a factor in determining the use of this step. Your results may be presented in numerical or narrative form. You may have quantitative numbers or more textual sorts of data. They may be quite extensive or concise. And you may have information about statistical significance, observations, relationships or differences between variables, examples of those results, or other sorts of information that is part of those specific findings of your study. And we use this step to share new knowledge that you obtained in your study. It's the place for you to really highlight what you found out in your paper, to present details that pertain to those results, so things that are important in understanding what your results mean, to either decode or encode themes that emerge in your study, particularly if you're looking at a more qualitative sort of paper, to compare results within your study. So perhaps you've got different factors to address in your study. You might have intra-study results that you want to compare, and to prepare the readers for further discussion. But remember, without actually discussing, explaining, or interpreting those results. We're leaving that for another part of your paper. So here's an example. We have this saying, the learning percentage for the split fixed angle keyboard was 90.4% and was significantly different from the learning percentages for the other 3 keyboards, all of which were less than 80%. Chord 77.3%, Contour split 76.9%, Dvorak 79.1%. And I've underlined some important information for you to be able to notice elements of this type of step. So we've got actual specific results, right? So the percentage for one particular outcome was 90.4%, and then we have the other sorts of outcomes for the other particular types of elements. So these are the specific results reported here in sentence form, and it could also be possible that there would be this listed in more qualitative information. They could follow this up with other sorts of examples. So it can appear in different ways, as I said before. Okay. Our other step is indicating alternative presentation of the results. And this is an important step because not everything that you might want to report about in the results section can be easily put into words. And even if they could be, it can often detract or take too much space in your paper to create a very lengthy, complicated set of paragraphs to try to explain something that you found, particularly when you can represent it in some sort of graph, table, chart, diagram, image. And this is why authors often present their results in some other more concise visual form. So the function of this step is to show the readers and to make those connections between that visual representation and the rest of the text that the author is reading. This is that place where you point to or you summarize those results. So we use the step to direct the reader to the results so that the reader doesn't just have to fumble through the table to try to figure out what's going on, that you're pointing them very carefully to look at certain things in that table or graph or chart, to help present those results in a particularly concise or clear way, to help the reader see that complex information in a way that's more understandable. Trying to write out the results of a huge table in paragraph form could take a very long time, but pointing out the particular cells within that table that the reader should look at can be much more simple. And also to help understand the results that were presented in this other way. So let's look at this example here. We have figures 6 and 7 plot the local heat transfer coefficient against the axial difference from the entrance of the test section at 2 Reynolds numbers. So we have at the very beginning is some of that orienting information, figures 6 and 7. So we know as a reader to go look at figures 6 and 7. And then the rest of the sentence explains what's happening in figures 6 and 7 and what we should be looking for in those sentences. So the results of the study are presented in this visual form, whatever 6 and 7 are, and it is likely that it's much easier to look at the image in figure 6 and 7 than for the authors to have tried to write out many, many sentences to try to explain perhaps a single line. Okay. The next part here, I'm going to explain, or I'm going to offer you some sentences, and you figure out which step each one is. As we go through, feel free to pause your video so you have time to look at each step. So go ahead and pause your video now and look at this step. Okay, so what step did you think that this sentence matched? And why? What was the kind of the key highlights? Well, you might have noticed that we've got some of that language, figures 3 and 4, that kind of help suggest that something is happening that is indicating that alternative presentation of the results. Well, let's look at it in total here. It says figures 3 and 4 show how performance changed across the 5 trials of the experiment. Figure 4 shows response as normalized to trial 1 for each keyboard. So we've got that orienting information to directing us to a particular visual element, and also an explanation of what is going on in that visual element. So it's a very nice example of that indicating alternative presentation of results. Okay, here's another sentence. All right, let's look at this sentence together. It says, women trained to like math reported comparable levels of self-reported math liking, mean equaling 3.97, compared with women trained to dislike math, mean equaling 3.61, T56 equals minus 0.8, p-value of 0.43, d equal 0.21. So we get a lot of information here. What's the important piece? Well, what we have are the specific reported results. So the comparable levels of self-reported math liking, and all of these, the mean equals, the t-value, all of these important details that are really highlighting the specific results of the study. Notice we don't have any sort of explanation of what these results mean. No discussion of the findings. We just have the specific, explicit, detailed laying out of what those results are. Here's another sentence for you to consider. Okay, the 95% confidence interval for the D47 values of these two samples overlap with the 95% confidence interval of the inorganic calcite calibration. Hopefully this one was pretty clear to figure out between these two steps. We have, again, clear reporting of the specific results, reporting specific results step. We've got all of this information of exactly that, the specific results of the study, the confidence intervals for these two elements. Okay, hopefully these two steps are pretty clear for you. They are functionally quite different and should generally be pretty easy for you to tease apart. Your next steps are to go look at the readings for Move 2 and look at the further examples of how these steps work. Of course, go look at your corpus and see how these steps are realized in your papers. You're going to find many, many examples of these because they are so crucial in the actual reporting of results in any paper. And complete the corpus exploration task and your quiz for this time. The next presentations will look at Moves 3 and Moves 4.